Bon dia a totes i a tots. Abans de començar l'acte, m'agradaria demanar un minut de silenci en record als nostres màrtirs. Moltes gràcies.
Free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
En primer lloc, vull donar-vos les gràcies per ser avui aquí, per acompanyar Palestina i per compartir aquest espai de solidaritat, memòria i compromís. Gràcies també a totes les persones, col·lectius i entitats que han fet possible aquest acte. Mentre som avui aquí reunides, l'estat sionista d'Israel continua cometent un genocidi contra el poble palestí. Dècades d'ocupació militar, colonització i un règim d'apartheid imposat per l'estat sionista d'Israel. Però Palestina no és només dolor. Palestina és resistència, dignitat i lluita. Fa 78 anys que el poble palestí resisteix al colonialisme, l'ocupació, l'apartheid, el genocidi, l'espoli i els intents d'esborrar la nostra existència. Avui, a més dels milers de persones assassinades i desplaçades, més de 9.600 presos i preses palestines continuen empresonats a les presons israelianes, molts d'ells sense càrrecs ni judici, i sotmesos a tortures, aïllament, negligència mèdica i condicions inhumanes. Molts pateixen violència física i psicològica de manera sistemàtica, en una vulneració constant dels drets humans més bàsics. Demanem l'alliberament de tots els presos de les 9.600 persones palestines en presons israelianes. També com la llibertat immediata del Seif i el Tiago, que van ser segrestats per l'estat sionista d'Israel en aigües internacionals i eren empresonats il·legalment a Israel. I no podem oblidar que el pròxim 15 de maig commemorem la MACBA, la catàstrofe iniciada el 1948 amb l'expulsió forçada de més de 3/4 parts de la població palestina de les seves terres i llars. Aquest any es compleixen 78 anys d'ocupació, però també 78 anys de resistència popular i de defensa dels nostres drets. Avui no som aquí només per recordar, som aquí per denunciar la complicitat internacional i per exigir accions immediates. Exigim sancions polítiques, econòmiques i diplomàtiques contra l'estat sionista d'Israel, la fi del comerç d'armes i el trencament de relacions amb un règim terrorista. Sabem que l'estat espanyol i administracions catalanes han fet molt més que altres governs, i això és gràcies a la nostra pressió popular constant i persistent. Però que hi hagi fet més que altres no vol dir que no hi hagi de posar fi a tota la seva complicitat. Nosaltres no pararem i no acceptarem res que no sigui la plena llibertat de Palestina, del riu fins al mar. Perquè el silenci és complicitat, perquè Palestina continuarà resistint fins a aconseguir la llibertat, justícia i el nostre dret legítim i obligat al retorn. És un honor immens tenir aquí avui amb nosaltres algunes de les veus més crítiques i valentes. Francesca Albanese, relatora especial de les Nacions Unides, Mariam Barghouti, periodista i investigadora palestina, i Joan Roura, periodista català. Visca Palestina lliure!
Viva!
Bon dia. Se'm sent, no? Sí. A veure, no voldria començar sense tenir un record pels activistes per drets humans segrestats per Israel el 30 d'abril davant les costes europees, el català d'origen palestí Abu Keshek Saif i el brasiler Thiago Ávila. Una simple menció. Bon dia a tothom, gràcies per haver vingut. De la quantitat de públic que hi ha i de la que s'ha quedat fora, se'n dedueix que la gent no es cansa de parlar i d'escoltar sobre Palestina. Gràcies, per tant, per estar aquí. Els que no han pogut entrar, doncs, a la tarda hi haurà una altra oportunitat a la Universitat de Barcelona. Gràcies al MACBA per l'espai que ens ha cedit i gràcies, òbviament, a Galàxia Gutenberg i a Tigre de Paper per l'edició d'aquesta òpera prima en la crònica periodística que ha fet Francesca Albanese, Cuando, mundo, duerme en castellà, de Galàxia Gutenberg, Quan el món dorm, traduït per Tigre de Paper. I gràcies també al Centre de Cultura Contemporània de Barcelona per haver-nos cedit Mariam Barghouti, que està en una estadia de 3 mesos, convidada pel CCCB i la UOC, la Universitat Oberta de Catalunya. Vaig tenir el plaer de conèixer-la el dilluns i l'havia llegit moltes vegades, sobretot al Guardian. És una persona que també té molt a dir sobre la guerra de narratives que s'està produint, que s'ha produït a Palestina pràcticament des de la declaració Balfour, és a dir, fa més de 100 anys, que va traspassar la creació de l'Estat d'Israel l'any 48 i la MACBA a Palestina, i que ara està molt present en com podem explicar als periodistes el que està passant a Gaza. Quan em van proposar acompanyar Francesca Albanese en aquest acte, em va sortir un sí immediat, no? Un sí allò de cor i de ment. Allò que diuen en anglès heart and mind, no? Doncs de seguida vaig dir que sí. No estic en les millors condicions físiques ara mateix, de baixa laboral, però em va fer molta gràcia poder presentar aquesta introducció en el periodisme que fa Francesca Albanese en aquest Cuando, mundo, duerme. No coneixia el llibre, ara ja l'he llegit, però el precedia la figura valenta de l'autora com a relatora especial de l'ONU sobre els drets humans als territoris palestins ocupats il·legalment per Israel. Coneixia la seva tasca, qui no la coneix avui dia, sobretot a partir de l'octubre del 23, i m'hi sentia en deute personalment com a periodista. Per moltes coses, pels seus informes, les dades que ha oferit, la seva valentia, però sobretot per ser la primera autoritat internacional que va posar nom el que Israel estava fent a Gaza. I va ser molt aviat, al maig de l'any 24, quan vam rebre a la redacció la seva anatomia d'un genocidi. Ens vam adonar que teníem la paraula clau expressada per una autoritat internacional que ens permetia als periodistes, que òbviament no som jutges, i ens hem de referir a alguna cosa per poder utilitzar segons quines paraules, no? I ens permetia, després de l'acusació del cas que va obrir Sud-àfrica i al desembre del 23 a la Cort Internacional de Justícia de l'ONU acusant Israel de genocidi, ella era la primera autoritat internacional que posava el nom sobre la taula. Israel estava perpetrant un genocidi a Gaza que continua, com deia abans la pròpia Albanese a la roda de premsa, que continua ben actiu ara d'una altra manera. La Mariam sap molt bé del que estic parlant, la paraula. Parlàvem el dilluns a la seu del CCCB. Les guerres de relats, les paraules, això es diu, però jo en soc un convençut, de vegades maten molt més que la pròpia munició. La manera en què es poden explicar les coses o amagar-les. Francesca, el genocidi palestí a Gaza, la neteja ètnica a Cisjordània i a Jerusalem Est, ara ja formen part d'un consens internacional com a tal, com a genocidi i com a neteja ètnica, entre els juristes, entre molts experts, entre bona part dels experts internacionals en matèria de genocidi, fins i tot jueus, israelians mateixos, que denuncien el seu propi país, com per exemple la ONG B'Tselem, que va treure un excel·lent informe també després d'Albanese, que deia el nostre genocidi. És una ONG israeliana que acusava el seu país d'estar perpetrant un genocidi. Amnistia Internacional, Metges Sense Fronteres, o sigui, s'ha elaborat un cert consens que malauradament no inclou els governs. Són molt notablement els governs europeus que el segrest mateix dels dos activistes que feia menció al principi van ser segrestats davant de les costes europees. Sembla ser amb una certa connivència de les autoritats gregues. Europa ha mirat cap a un altre cantó des del 8 d'octubre del 23 i això ha posat en entredit els propis principis fundacionals de la Unió Europea. Jo crec que és aquesta indiferència dels estats la que ha empès una mica Albanese, i li pregunto amb ella, a posar nom i cognom a aquestes víctimes. I a través de 9 personatges, jo crec que molt ben explicats, ella és allò que en periodisme en diem de fer d'un particular treure'n una generalització, o sigui, buscar històries personals per treure conclusions polítiques generals. Jo crec que aquesta ha estat la intenció de Francesca Albanese, però m'agradaria que ens ho expliqués ella.
Buenos días a todos y todas. It's really beautiful to be with you all. Thank you for the introduction, although I'll tell you there are a few things that I wish not to hear anymore, and this is not against you, it's just I'm not the hero. I'm not the hero here, and this is part of the problem, and I would like you not to see me as a hero, but just a decent human person, a human being who's doing what everyone should be doing. I just found myself into this very weird position, and of course I know it comes from a place of good intentions, but we in this part of the world should stop celebrating ourselves. And the fact that, again, I feel very, very uncomfortable being called a hero when the real hero, I'm sitting next to one of my heroes and someone who has inspired me, and I think, I was in the United Nations, I was the first one to articulate, to explain that it was a genocide. But simply, and I was not even an eyewitness. She is the eyewitness. And so many, I've interacted with so many Palestinians over the past 3 years in particular. Since and it's been extremely difficult to not to lose this sense of keeping together, keep on going, maintaining your voice, your mental clarity. But I've always found inspiration on the Palestinians, and something I keep on reminding myself is that the Palestinians denounced apartheid, their apartheid, in 1956. This is the first time there is a great scholar, Rania Mohareb, who's her PhD is about that. And why does it take always so long to recognize something as serious as the crimes that go with settler colonialism, because this is what Israel is after all, when it's the voice of the oppressed to denounce it. So my merit, and I take it all, is that I renounce to my privilege, or part of my privilege. I put my privilege at risk, and not to lie. I decided not to lie, and I decided to tell the truth. This is what I've just done, and this makes me apparently a hero. And so the book is, I loved writing this book. I mean, my husband tells me, you should stop saying that because it's your book. But I'm honest, that for me it was cathartic, because I was writing this book in parallel with the investigation that led to my real understanding of how this world works, of why the genocide is not over yet, why the genocide continues, and in fact Israel is allowed to commit, even to spread its crimes around the world, including in the Mediterranean Sea. This is not even new, because as I have documented in my first report on self-determination, and as the Palestinians have denounced it forever, Israel has committed crimes outside its borders, against every Palestinian who would speak about Palestine, who would maintain the memory of their country and their nation, although it had been fragmented as a cookie and spread across the world. But those fragments were people, and the people have denounced it, and Israel, through its secret services, through the Mossad, has killed many people. And now the crimes are committed against, even in plain sight, in international waters, just a few kilometers off European coasts, and Europe doesn't react. This is the problem. So for me, writing this book was cathartic, because it was reminding myself of the beauty that Palestine had planted in me. And I thought that this was a good way to heal myself while reminding myself of all this beauty, and to keep alive the memory that I had, my own memories. But then also, I do not believe in self-celebratory writing. So I said, this is a time for denunciation, and the occupation, the apartheid, the other crimes, where it comes from, the plight of millions of refugees, the plight of the Palestinians who are refugees without being refugees as matter of status. Because for the Palestinians, being refugees is a moral issue, is the measure of a moral wound. Those are orphans of a land that was one day and is no more, as Edward Said used to say. So I wrote this book, which is very much about international law without being a treatise. It talks about human rights, which I always say belong to the people and not to academics to write expensive books. And then it's about history, and it's the history of the Palestinian people as I've managed to learn it, not just as a person, but as a scholar. And it's a book that calls for action. But instead of just telling this, as I normally do, I chose some Virgils, some characters who are real people, real lives. Most of them are still alive, some of them are no longer with us. But again, for me it was a way not to continue the I wrote this book because I didn't want to contribute to the dehumanization of the Palestinian people. Because there is so much in my reports that doesn't appear, and it's the life, it's the culture, it's the identity, it's the beauty, it's the lightness that the Palestinian people keep on maintaining despite all the horror, all the ugliness that befalls them every day. But Miriam and I were talking before coming here, and the fact that she knows some of the people I spoke about in the book are also friends of her. So it's very lovely, and I was interested in hearing what she thinks of the book after reading it, because of course the fiercest judgment I fear is that of the Palestinians. But so, yeah, thank you for having me here.
Francesca, maybe the most interesting character of your book for me is Abu Hassan, because it shows the historic difficulties for the Palestinian narrative to survive in spite of the documented evidences of their facts that they show. It was not since the 80s that the new Israeli historians, after the opening of the document of the 48, they started to show that there was an ethnic cleansing in Palestine, even if Palestinians knew very well since 1948, and they wrote it. Salha, Khalidi, they wrote about the MACBA, the ethnic cleansing, and yet still now this is very, very much questioned, these Palestinian narratives. So what can you tell us about Abu Hassan? What did he show you in your first visit to Jerusalem, as you tell in your book?
Yeah, it was a very... it's interesting that you picked Abu Hassan, because for me the most painful remains a hint. And this is the first chapter of the book is about childhood in Palestine, and it's the one chapter that I've reread the least. I really didn't want to go through it again. Abu Hassan was a way to remind myself of the need to write this book because it was my first. Abu Hassan is one of the first people I met in Palestine. Unlike many of you, I've never been an activist. This is why it's so funny that I'm sort of now accused, you're an activist, as if it was a crime. And but it's I went to Palestine the first time. Of course, I knew about Palestine, not as much as I should have known, and I didn't understand Palestine yet. I just saw the symptoms, the occupation, the settlements, but these are symptoms. I didn't see the root cause yet. I didn't see the matrix yet. But however, I went to Palestine for an interview, for a job that then I got as a legal officer, a lawyer in the office of the legal affairs of UNRWA. And Abu Hassan was a tour guide, a very unusual tour guide. This is for those who know him, he's lovely. He's a very lovely man, but he's also so harsh and so blunt. And so it is not a normal tour guide. He's an occupation tour guide. So it takes you to see the scars of the occupation, of the apartheid on the land and on the communities. So it takes you to see the wall, it takes you to enclosed communities, the encircled communities by the wall, because there are people trapped in by this 9-meter tall wall. It's incredible, and this wall has been built inside Palestinian territory, on Palestinian land, to separate families, to separate people from their land, to keep on stealing resources, but by also destroying the capacity to live. Who wants to live in a piece of land surrounded by walls or separated from your livelihood? And I've learned a lot. But on the first day we met, after the tour, we went to Hebron. And after because of course, I went to Jerusalem, and the first thing I did was a tour with of the healing. What is it called? The healing wall, the Wailing Wall. Sorry, with an Israeli tour guide, and both my husband and I, because my husband was with me, we were shocked by how theatrical the guide tour was. We were here and we were killed, and it was because there is killing of Palestinians. I was saying, why is he talking of something that happened like thousands of years ago with this fervor? So my alarms went on, and we were talking in a restaurant, in the restaurant of the hotel where we were, how shocked we were. We were really ignorant, me and my husband. We were shocked by seeing this, and this display of fervor. And the restaurant told us, well, but this is just the cosmetics to convince everyone that Israel has been as this, existed in this form, and this is just their return to their place and to erase Palestinians. If you want something a little bit more real about what this land is today, and this is Abu Hassan, and I met Abu Hassan, and after the tour, Abu Hassan told me, so what brought you here? And I said, look, I'm here because I've been invited for an interview with the UN, and he started his rant against the UN, and I felt insulted. And I thought, white saviorism. Who are you with your rage to make me uncomfortable? I'm coming here to save you, and you treat me that way. Of course, I didn't say that. I've never been that brutal. But inside me, this is how I felt. Why is he attacking me? I'm the good one. And this is the thing, that Abu Hassan, I have goosebumps as I say that, because there are no good ones. There are good intentions that pave the way to hell. And this is what also I realized the United Nations has been part of. Yes, has made people stay there on the land and not to die of starvation early on. But this is the best use of the United Nations that could be made. Because I say, and Abu Hassan was right. If you're not part of the solution, after 70 years, chances are that you're part of the problem. So this is Abu Hassan in my life.
Mariam, let me ask you a question. let's go back to the words, narrative, which my job is working with that. Let me ask you, you have a very long experience of working with Western media. I would like to know which are the limits you get from the news desk in our Western capitals about the words you can use and the ones you cannot, reporting as a Palestinian from Palestine.
Okay. Hello. I think that's a good question, and I'm gonna answer it in a way that also corresponds to the book, because I really do think it's a good book. And I was telling Francesca earlier that as a Palestinian, okay, and a Palestinian that writes as well and documents, and I think many of my Palestinian peers may agree, but whenever an international writes about us, and it's oftentimes great international people of the international community that show great solidarity with us. But sometimes we just, we read and we see either pretentiousness or not quite grasping it, right? And I think something that Francesca does so beautifully is that she keeps herself in there, but also in a way where she's like humbling herself the whole time. She acknowledges moments of ignorance. And then more importantly is there's a really clear recognition of everything happening as part of a system, right? And part of that system is recognition and being able to name things. So there are certain areas where you recognize, that this isn't, that why this is a problem to be calling it a genocide. And we really had those problems as a journalist, as a Palestinian journalist that works for often international outlets. I was denied the right to say, even before the genocide, I was denied the right to say occupation. We weren't allowed to really mention or cover the illegal settlements in the West Bank when Palestinians were in protests, even nonviolent protests. There's an insistence to call it a riot. Or when Israelis, beat Palestinians, Israeli soldiers, or armed Israeli settlers, we have to say, oh, a skirmish happened. It's just a little thing, no big deal. A few people were shot, but it's no big deal. It's just a skirmish. So it is things like that. And of course there's, oftentimes you would see in the headlines, and I think perhaps many people in this room are familiar with this, but Palestinians died. We just die. Israelis are killed. And there's never a mention of the perpetrator against Palestinians, so that was really made invisible, right? So that the world could not understand that there is a perpetrator, and that is the Israeli regime and its operations. And that was constantly a struggle. So, I know you don't want to say you're a hero, but you have to give credit where credit is due. You were a very rare voice at a very crucial time, because I look at the testimonies from 1948 and I'm reading through them, and there were horrible, horrible, horrible things had happened. But you need to recognize that at the time, Palestinians, we were mostly also peasants and farmers, and we didn't have access to the language of empire. We didn't speak English. We had no access to media representations or who was writing the reports. We were unable to relay our story. And of course, international correspondents and human rights representatives served empire, right? And I think this is something special where you served humanity. And you said, I feel like you were actually, one of the few people that had come to Palestine and said, well, I'm gonna take my job seriously. And you did, because it is true. Until now, as Palestinians, we are still standoffish with international organizations and human rights organizations that come, because they still insist on not just seeing things the way they want to see them, but calling them the way, in the terms that they want to call them. And that's been very problematic. because we saw what happened, you know, when the insistence on calling the Israeli hostages, but Palestinians, you know, these criminal prisoners, and not recognizing just that asymmetry also in just how we label things and what that means for the global world. Those are, you know, the things that I would say about language. And it's very important because I think one really important thing in the book that made me really enjoy going through it. And it's a hard book in terms of content because there are, you know, difficult things you might need to pause on, but it's an easy read. You know, you can go through it, which is nice, but you really called things as you saw them in terms of where they are situated in the system of oppression and where people are people. You showed the banality of the experience. I think that's where Abu Hassan's story is really nice. That you showed the banality of occupation. You know, he's someone that constantly goes, I will ruin a little bit of the book for those that didn't read. Yes, I will ruin a little bit. But Abu Hassan is this man in Jerusalem that gives alternative tours, but he often would take people to this cafe called Mehbash in Jerusalem. And Francesca writes about, there's a very lovely line, or a few paragraphs, on how even the waiters just didn't really seem like they really knew what they were doing, and, you know, and all these different details of the place. And then later on she would explain to you how this is also a place where young Palestinians who were either targeted by Israel or, for example, detained and could not find a job would eventually find a job at this cafe. So it linked the banality of our experience. We're not just killed with bombs and bullets. And I think anyone that thinks that is gravely mistaken, and your threshold will always be the killing of Palestinians in the tens of thousands to recognize something is wrong. It is at the bare minimum that we are unable to just see each other. I haven't left Ramallah in months before I came here because we can't move between districts. And that really harms because not only are we separated from each other, we can no longer name each other's pains anymore. Because Israel does use gradient oppression. So it uses different types of oppression and violence against different Palestinians. In Gaza, it's obliteration and carnage. In the West Bank, it's through policies and mass detention mostly. In Jerusalem, it's the judicial courts, and it's trying to make it unrelatable. And the only thing we have left is relaying stories through a language that accurately depicts them. And I think this is the strength of Francesca's writing.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I inject in this? Because it's very interesting. I was also listening to some suggestions you gave me in the introduction, but we are going through a process of emancipation. Palestine has triggered our emancipation, if it works. Because look, I was inspired on this reflection once I read an article say Palestine is a feminist question. And my first reaction, always coming from a place of ignorance, was, this is so narrow. No, and then it was mind-blowing. It is, because the way, you see, it's the colonialism is the most institutionalized form of patriarchy. It was born from a place of patriarchy. It was born, and it's so powerful to say that in Spain. Because we know, I criticize us as colonial. It's not that we were born colonial. We became colonial because through the church and through the empire, in fact, centuries of church domination and empire, we became the Europe we are. And it has stayed like that. And we have erased the diversities. Because this is a problem that this Europe still has. We are unable to unite across diversity. But the thing is that now it's interesting because there is a revamping or a return so powerful of feminine energy, which is punching back the power, this testosteronic power, which wants war, and the response is no, we want peace, but we want, and we reclaim it in a way. The way I've been punished, it's the epitome of patriarchy, because see what I'm told. It's like, do your mandate. Those who think they are respectful, saying she doesn't stay in the limits of her mandate, as if they knew what the limits of my mandate were. I mean, as a human rights lawyer, as a human rights observer and voice for the European, actually, no, not European, sorry, the United Nations. I wish there was the special rapporteur of the European Union. But the thing is that being told, go back to your mandate, is like go back to the kitchen. So this is why, what makes the system go ballistic is the fact that a woman can speak her mind so clearly and have the strength of history, the strength of knowledge, the power of knowledge thrown back into, the power space. This is something that, and this is, it gives me so much strength, because I want to say Palestine is also showing, Palestine has made me a better person, for sure. And there are so many young people who are already better person, as young as they are. And this is why I wrote this book. I'm glad you picked on how accessible it is. It is intentional. And this is where I really put down all my ego, because lawyers love writing in a way that it's incomprehensible. It's intentional. It's a way to protect ourselves, right? Because of course we say important things, but then we make it sound so, no, when it comes to human rights are for the people. Human rights are of the people. And so I said, okay, this is a way for the young generation to understand the violence of the politics of identity, but also the beauty of humanity, of recognizing that we are all equal. And yes, we have made mistakes, but we can still learn from our mistakes and make no more and no further mistakes. So sorry for hijacking.
Yeah, I agree with Francesca. As a matter of fact, every time more people is saying that the Palestinian fight right now, it's a global fight for freedom against despotism, authoritarianism, far-right parties in Europe. There's a kind of an alliance in between the Zionist government of Israel and the far-right in Europe, in Italy, in France, in Germany.
You mean European Zionism?
Yeah. European Zionism, that's right. Yes, it's a kind of an alliance, very, very clearly. So the Palestinian fight for their freedom, it's a kind of a global fight for freedom. That's kind of every time more people say so, and I agree. Well, the fact that over 60% of population in Gaza are 48 refugees. After the crisis in Gaza of October 23, do you think it made a lot of people revisit the history of Palestine, revisit what happened in 1948? At least some journalists, we try to refer to the period of the 48, being said that most part of people in Gaza, the victims in Gaza now, they were victims in 1948. Do you think in this fight of narratives in between Israel and the Palestinians, the genocide in Gaza could help to revisit what was generally accepted from the history of 1948? It's a question to both of you.
I think it helped. I don't know if it helped, because it's really sad that it took a genocide for people to start reading history And I don't think it's the fact that, you know, the genocide happened, but I do think it's the fact that this was a moment also where people had to rely on Palestinian journalists and Palestinian documentation. You know, we didn't have, international journalists weren't allowed to enter Gaza, and a lot of the documentation, you know, was from civilians. It was very raw. They were filming their own killings at that point. And that forced people, I think, to just question the narrative that Israel tried to put forward in the beginning. And it helped, you know, push that need to investigate more. Okay, well, what is happening here? And I do think it helped people link, oh, this isn't actually just a now thing. You know, it has a years-long trace. And I think that is very important. But I do fear that at times, that even knowing that history is not enough, right? Because there is also this constant attempt of placing Gaza and the West Bank as Palestine. You know, forgetting Palestinians in Jerusalem, forgetting Palestinians with Israeli citizenship. So it becomes, you know, just stuck there. And I think it needs to broaden that. So people sometimes may, and again, I'll bring it back to the book, but I like how the book is not passive, but people will absorb knowledge and information and history and hoard it, kind of, just, you know, I know some things. But, you know, an argument that is made in the book, and I think is really important also in what people were learning, is do something with that knowledge, right? Allow it to change how you behave and how you practice and how you engage with the world. And I think that's what it is. It helped, but the more important question is, what is so wrong with the world that we needed thousands of Palestinians to be murdered to pick up a book?
I was looking if I see my Teresa, who works with me, because I wanted to check if we can change the image and put something. You are going to love it. If you think we can change the image, and if we can put, she understands, the wall, what I call the wall, because you will understand what I mean. But meanwhile, let me elaborate on what Mariam said. I think that what has shocked this part of the world is not even the slaughter of Palestinian children, it's the fact that how it's possible that those who have survived this are doing this. What a stupid question, sorry, but what a stupid question. First of all, it's stupid because the first, some of you, I remember the faces, some of you were here when I had the first talk about Palestine 3 years ago, and it was with a psychiatrist. And I've said and I repeat, the situation in Palestine doesn't need lawyers, doesn't need diplomats, doesn't need politicians, it requires psychiatrists. Because no, it's not, I'm not making fun of, it's about trauma. Unhealed trauma, manipulated trauma, creates the perfect environment for trauma to reproduce itself. And this is why I really admire the Palestinian capacity. And of course, I'm not trying to paint the Palestinians I don't want to essentialize. There are there are also Palestinians with bad intentions. But this is besides the point. They are humans. What I want to say is that what I've learned from the Palestinians, and I've really learned it, is is the capacity of being angry without being hateful, anger without hate. And this is the thing. When people say, "Oh, how do you manage to stay so calm?" I fake it. It's because I know, and you will see. Hopefully, I will make it more clear. I'm creating suspense for the world to come. Because we need to be heard. We need to understand where we are, who we are, and as someone yesterday in another public event said, we need to understand that if we don't take care of el espacio en nuestra trinchera, the space where we live, this is where we can make change. We cannot keep on blaming the United Nations and the states, where in fact, what the states, even in a country like that, a government that has been the most progressive, not just in Europe, but it's among the most progressive in the world. I would like you to realize it. And I keep on hearing words of condemnation for this government. This is, of course it can be improved, but it starts with you. It starts with you, and the fact that there are more people in the streets buying from the very companies who are complicit with the genocide, rather than here listening to us. Without, there were twice the number of people here in honesty. But it means that there are so many people who are still drawing in their ignorance. There are still people who do not know what's happening in Palestine. I don't think that they don't care. They don't know, or they think that it's far away from them. It's removed from them. No, it's also theirs. Or there is the fact that there is a link between what happens to the Palestinians and what happens to migrant and refugees, and capitalism, necro-capitalism. This is something that we need to own as a concept. There are people who are getting rich out of the misery. Okay, it will come, doesn't matter, out of the misery of others. So for me, Palestine has been a revealer that is I agree with you. Why did we wait for a genocide to happen before seeing these people as humans? But isn't it the old story? Isn't it the old story that there are tragedies? Isn't that after the Holocaust, and not even after the Second World War, that we had the normative system that we have, that, like it or not, has improved our life, has made this world, although it doesn't look like, more equal than it was. So we are part of the process. There are no shocks, there are trends and tendencies, and we need to take responsibility. We cannot criticize anyone until and unless we have our house in order. And this is why I thank so much the BDS movement and the BDS activists who are relentlessly working they are the educators. I mean, I do see, and I didn't know myself, the BDS, until a few years ago, but they are the educators, they are the translators of international law into our life. So unless you are, as much as you can, adhering to the BDS way of ethical living, meaning have ethical purchases, ethical sales, ethical investment, ethical procurements. I mean, you also harbor quite a degree of hypocrisy by just criticizing those in power for not going till the end. Because the economic system we are all part of doesn't allow those in power to go further than that. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner we make sure that this is the last crime committed against the Palestinian people, and not only them.
Following what you said,
No, ¿Qué es? Es que Teresa isn't here. What is it?
Okay. All right. So I just need a phone to look for the image I would like you to. You see, without Teresa, it's just a lot of good intention.
Well, following what Francesca said, I think it was first the Guardian correspondent in Jerusalem, who was before that correspondent in Johannesburg, maybe 10, 15 years ago. He compared the Israeli regime in the occupied territories with the South African apartheid system. It was quite a scandal long ago. Now many people think so. after what Francesca said about BDS, and do you think, first of all, do you think it's comparable what Israel is, the Bantustanization of the West Bank, of East Jerusalem, what happened in Gaza, it's comparable to what the South African apartheid authorities did in the 70s and 80s? And do you think that the South African way, the solution, the overcoming of the apartheid, it could somehow be applicable in Palestine in medium term or long term? And the international pressure, popular international pressure, as it happened with the South African, starting the black, the Afro-American community.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So and I've had this discussion with many friends as well, but there's a problem for me in the comparison of Israel's apartheid with South Africa, right? At the apartheid level, yes, it is comparable, and I think we can see the parallels very clearly and the segregation that is happening. But I don't think that is only what Israel is doing, right? That is not the only thing. And I think a more accurate parallel that we can draw is between Israel and the US. And the US it's a colonial state. It has slaughtered the indigenous community in the US, has pushed them into Bantustans, what we call now reservations. And they've been turned nearly invisible across, decades and centuries of just murder. And I think that's the more comparable aspect that we want to look at. So in that case, I don't think it's clear or applicable to look at the solution of in South Africa to Israel, because there is a difference here. There's also the very big difference in just the context and day and age that we're in, that Israel is operating in. And we need to understand that Israel's goal is not just to ethnically cleanse, it is not just to do apartheid, it is not just the committing of a genocide. These all serve a goal, and that is the dismantling of the Palestinian right to exist as a collective people, to exist together. They don't care if there's Palestinians just scattered all over the world. That the impetus is that they cannot exist safely together. And that's what settler colonialism is. They're trying to replace us. So I think the solution needs to come from a place of dismantling this regime and its operations in its entirety, right? Because also, if you want to take the South African example, it didn't end. Apartheid didn't really end. It just became corporate. And we can't repeat that. And I don't have an answer to this.
May I? And the thing is that I agree. I totally agree, because I was recently in South Africa, and you understand that it takes, we call apartheid. South Africa gave the world the term apartheid, but it just refers to, we know apartheid as legal apartheid as the institutionalization in the law of racial segregation. But the racial segregation that at a certain point was captured in the law was just part and parcel of 300 years of colonial oppression, stealing, brutalization, ethnical substitution. It was really, because even the fact of bringing entire groups of people from Asia, from Southeast Asia as workers, meaning people were used as private property of the ideology. It is an ideology of suprematism. And yes, the South African people are still on the path of the apartheidization. And yes, maybe apartheid doesn't exist in the law, but the geographic, architectural apartheid is still, it doesn't mean that it's still there, oh, so nothing works. No, it's a process. This is why, I mean, I say defeatism is our second enemy after necrocapitalism. So we need to understand that change comes with action, with understanding, with awakening. And Palestine has awakened us to the world as it is. I much agree with the comparison you make to the United States, because this is what settler colonialism is about. And it's the suprematism. I come here, I'm superior, I'm telling you that the land is divided, and I imagine the Native Americans reacting as the Palestinians reacted in the 30s. You have to watch this movie, it's phenomenal. Palestine, 1936. It's incredible, because in fact we tend to think that the resistance, Palestinian resistance, started in 66, 67, no, 48. No, it started very early on. And it was not a resistance to the arrival of Jewish people from Europe. Absolutely not. It was to an ideology that walked on the heels of British colonialism, because it's the Brits who gave away a land that was not theirs to give, as I've said before. And the first resistance was in 1936 to the taking of the land. But this is what happened in the United States. In the United States, people fleeing persecution in Europe. Getting there, starts getting your eyes used. People fleeing. This is why I say, don't believe in easy narratives. There is always a trauma at the beginning. So there were people fleeing Europe out of persecution, and they were from this part of the world. You didn't really send to Latin America people fleeing out of persecution. Hernan Cortés. So no, you Spanish did it all. You initiated it all. But however, there were the northern part of the the Americas. United States started with the colonization, but then soon became mors tua vita mea. I take the land and I tell you what are the rules of the land. And this is how little by little the native population found itself into reservoir actually. But remember, there were peace treaties. At a certain point, there were peace treaties that were supposed to protect like the settlers. So the Native Americans entered into treaties, accepted the settlers, and then they were eaten up through starvation, so the genocide is a process, it's not an act. And it is to be seen through the dehumanization of the other. So, now tell me, what do you see here? Mariam, come. Now you guys should see it. What do you see? If you know what it is, please don't say that, otherwise you spoil the exercise of awakening. What is it? It's a wall, clear. I said it wrong. But what is in the wall? A stone. Okay, a stone. So you see the stone. And if I tell you that you're stupid, you think that I'm insulting you. This is the effect that you BDS people or other well-intended people have on people who are ignorant, who do not see what Palestine is. Because the moment I'll tell you that there is a cigar there, and that is not a pebble, but is the ash of the sea. You see the cigar? No, even when I tell you that Palestine is occupied, you don't trust me. You keep on seeing the pebble. You keep on believing what you believe, right? It's a cigar. The interstice there. Wow! Yes. This is the Palestine effect. Sorry. This is the. Do you see the cigar or not? Aha. Sorry. Don't feel bad, but is there anyone who doesn't see the cigar? ¿No lo ves? Lo ves, el cuerpo, the brown thing. The brown thing is the body of the cigar. And the pebble is So you are okay. Ora lo ves. I know how it feels. Folks, amigos, amigas, ahora explico el secreto. Oh, gracias. Hay todavía gente que no lo ve. No es una culpa. Es normal. This is the thing. The moment you see Palestine, you cannot unsee it. And this is why I insist that those who see it, be kind and patient. Because we need to educate others. We need to educate others, not just about Palestine, but the system that is allowing people to make profits out of the slaughter of the Palestinians today in the most brutal form, but it has always been like that. So I was like you, when I went to Palestine, I'm a good person. I'm so well-intended that I even didn't tell Abu Hassan, I'm grateful, Palestinian, you don't thank me for being here? No, I didn't tell that, because I'm kind. And I also, I think that this is the beauty. I mean, we have a lot of machism in our culture, and I don't want to make the man in the room feel uncomfortable. This is not about men and women. It's not about that. It's just about this testosteronic posture that goes with, I know it all, and it has been historically with you men. But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's infectious, as you can see in Europe. So we need to be gentle. We need to be kind. We really need to take people to see, to understand. And if you shout, if I say, you stupid, don't see the cigar, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We really need to understand what it is and explain it in the most generous, kind, and motherly fashion. So yeah, there are bad mothers as well. Let's try to do it.
Bé, bueno, a veure, us podeu imaginar que amb la companyia d'aquestes dues senyores jo em podria tirar fins al vespre, Vull dir que no, però sí que m'han advertit, i ja ho sabia, que hauríem d'acabar cap allà a 2:45 per donar temps a les editorials a vendre llibres i a la Francesca a filmar-los. I com que jo no les vull monopolitzar, doncs obrirem un torn de paraules amb el temps que ens queda sobre 20, tampoc cal que siguem molt puntuals, 20-25 minuts. Per tant, obrim torn de paraules, jo crec que hi ha moltes preguntes, el tema és amplíssim, és històricament ampli, té actualitat, té repercussió internacional, ens afecta a Europa, afecta a tot arreu, al sud global, hi ha diferents punts de visió, si es poden fer milers de preguntes. Intentem acotar-ho amb una desena de preguntes entre el públic. Endavant, per l'ordre, primer aixecar la mà, primera pregunta.
Hello, thank you for the beautiful talk. I have a question in the context of narrative wars. It's both for Mariam and Francesca. So I'm watching a lot of videos on YouTube about how Zionism is losing its grip on the world. And I wonder if this is anchored to reality, or is it some type of left-wing coping mechanism, or do you have an opinion about this?
One of the things that I understood, because then knowledge is like, or truth is like an onion. You need to peel. You need to understand. Also, not to believe what we have always believed. That question the questions you are asked and you ask. It might be very confusing. Zionism is one of these words. I've been very restrained for a long time not to touch this word at all, because it feels, it's going to bring me trouble. Then I understand what is the secret. We tend to think of Zionism as a feature, a characteristic, something belonging to the Jewish people, and it's so wrong. It's so wrong. In fact, I'm telling you, the Zionism that I see in Europe right now, or in other parts of the world, including in what we call the global south, has nothing to do with the Jewish people. Zionism is an ideology, and ideologies always serve goals, objectives, directions. So, and have to be questioned. So it's interesting that now there are laws that are being passed so as not to question Zionism. That has nothing to do with religion, and they even want us to believe that this has to do with the protection of the Jewish people. It's not like that. Actually, what's happening is endangering the Jewish people wherever they are. And it doesn't matter if we are also talking of Jewish people who love Israel. And this is something so deep that for the time being I put aside, but I'm saying, just try not to judge, because remember, the unhealed trauma, it hardly allows to see other people's traumas. However, Zionism is, it might have started as an ideology serving the purpose of protecting Jewish people from European persecution and nationalism and etc. I'm saying it might. However, for the Palestinians, it has always been what it is today, a tool for persecution, oppression, injustice. So we need to admit that there is this part of it. But today is not even that. Today, Zionism has nothing to do with protecting anyone. Today is an ideology for regional domination, actually for domination, and it's the tool that is being used by the most powerful. So yes, it is to be deconstructed. Today you have, and this is what has been the wake-up call for me. When I started denouncing that it could be genocide, I didn't speak with anything close to certainty. Even in March 2024, when I wrote and presented Anatomy of a Genocide, this I said, there are reasonable grounds to think that it is. And then 6 months later, I said, it is genocide as part of a colonial erasure, and it's a process. But in November 2023, I was in Australia, and I met with 40 organizations from Pacific Islands, and all of them were saying that they were prohibited from standing in solidarity with the Palestinians. Although they're Christian countries, they were Christian people, they have nothing to, because today Zionism travels on the heels of Christianity. Now we have the what is called Judeo-Christian tradition. What it is? What is it? And this is the thing, this is why I say we need to become really vigilant and not to be silenced into fear, not to be afraid. Ideologies can turn can turn history into a dark place. And today, this is what I think of Zionism, not as it was, whatever it was, as it is today.
It's a hard question for me. Unlike Francesca, I judge. So, but I feel like as a Palestinian, I might be allowed. Yeah. I do think Zionism is losing its grip in the world. Zionism as a colonial ideology that pushes for the erasure of a population and replacing it. Israel's Zionism in Israel, I think it's losing its grip in the world. And it's on two folds. The first is because people are becoming aware of what it encapsulates in terms of profound oppression and crimes. And the second aspect of it is also, it is losing its grip because Palestine is also forcing Europe and the US as well to really deal with its actual anti-Semitic problem. And that means is, why was it ever a legitimate answer to send all of our Jews or Jewish citizens to a place and telling them, here, this is where Jews belong, in this area in the Middle East, away from us? You know? And I think it's losing its grip with people realizing, oh, we need to also address that and recognize it. And that helps Zionism lose its grip, because the way Israel has created its myth is by weaponizing also Jewish pains and Jewish histories, and recognizing these realities in the world, right? So once people also break these ideas and perceptions, obviously it's going to lose its grip.
Jo, si em permeteu, voldria afegir una cosa, molt breument. En primer lloc, s'ha de construir aquest discurs, que jo crec que cada cop ven menys, d'equalitzar antisionisme amb antisemitisme. Això és fonamental. És a dir, entre altres coses, perquè hi ha molts antisemites que són sionistes, els evangelis, per exemple. O sigui, aquesta equació s'ha d'abordar, és a dir, no és correcta. I després n'hi ha una altra, la segona. Utilitzar la memòria de l'Holocaust per perpetrar crims contra el poble palestí és la millor eina de banalització de la memòria històrica de l'Holocaust jueu que hi ha. I el protagonista d'aquesta banalització de l'Holocaust no és altre que el govern israelià, utilitzant la memòria de les víctimes jueves dels anys 40 i 30 per perpetrar genocidi i neteja ètnica contra un tercer poble.
I agree, but there is one thing, and I don't disagree with what you are saying, Mariam. But there is one thing I do not believe that what Israel is today is just, greater Israel. I don't think that, because Zionism is the ideology that is serving and accompanying greater Israel. And while, yes, that kind of Zionism connected to the Israeli-Palestinian dynamic, now, yes, it's understood, and that kind of suasion power of Zionism is over. But there is another layer. I do not believe that greater Israel is it just about expanding the territorial borders of Israel up to Palestine. No, it's much bigger. It's a project of regional domination, and this it gets confirmed every day. We tend to think that the states is the ultimate both guarantors and respondent to our issues and claims, but decisions are not made by states, and states are tools. Today, like 200 years ago, the main decisions are taken by those who control financial power, military power, and the communication, the technology. And yes, the headquarters of these three powers is in the US, but it has proxies all over, and Greater Israel is a project today of imposition of a form of control over the Middle East, because it's West Asia, because West Asia is a very strategic part of the world, resource-wise, but also breaking the balance in the entire region. And there is Europe next to it. What are European people going to gain, even if I had to talk to the right-wing parties who are so concerned with migrants and refugees as if they were the security problem in our societies? Well, like sitting wars after wars after wars can only bring more refugees, and just for this you should be against what is happening, this US Israeli alliance, which is bringing havoc to the region. And this is why I say Zionism has evolved, and today is the ideology in the hands of the most powerful, who keeps on being the most powerful, and who want to annihilate. It doesn't matter how many children and how many mothers and fathers they annihilate.
No. Hola, yo quería hacer una pregunta más que todo, más pedir un consejo sobre esas personas como yo que venimos de un sitio que no somos como autodidactas, ¿no? Para enterarnos de todo esto. Yo me ocupo de arte contemporánea y aquí justo estamos en el MACBA, ¿no? Un sitio de arte contemporánea. Y bueno, me he dado cuenta, ¿no? Que claro, yo ya no puedo más practicar como practicaba antes el formato artístico, y me he dado cuenta con todas las luchas, todo lo que tratamos de hacer siempre y todo, informándonos, que hay todavía mucho como miedo adentro de este mundo, un miedo que después causa silencios y causa... Entonces, yo que no tengo recursos de palabras, que trabajo más con lenguajes inconscientes, ¿no? Que no sé expresarme de otras maneras, no sé, quisiera preguntar de alguna manera como un consejo ante este miedo. No sé si me explica, perdón.
Look, I mean, what I used is not a strictly legal instrument, it's visual. And I think that this is the most telling thing that I've shared with you today. In a way, understand the fear. The fear is intentional, is to make sure that we don't get out of our, of our squared meter of comfort. And it's worse than that. The fear is real, because the moment you step out and you start melting into something that is not your business, then you can be punished. But you know what? It's not the end of the world. Okay? It's not the end of the world. Actually, when I say it's karma, Palestine has made me a better person, in the sense that of course I have a lot of fear. I have a lot of fear because I have a lot to lose in this life, and I'm scared every day because I know that we are standing against them like a giant mafia that thinks like a mafia and thinks like a mafia. And at the same time, I say, I want to leave a better world to my children, and I cannot wait for others to do that, or for them to pick up with the consequences. So by being controlled, this is something I really learned from the beautiful people of my beautiful country. You can have fear and not being controlled by fear. And actually, I think two things. One is that artists are probably the most needed and the most powerful tools for awakening that we need, precisely for what I showed. There was no Palestine, no watermelon, no Palestinian flag, no keffiyeh there, but you understand the message. So, and the other thing is that this is not new. This is not new. This is how humanity progresses. This is how humanity becomes more human and humane. So it's always interesting to have this discussion in Spain, because this country has so many wounds, not just the wounds of the dictatorship. And we were talking before, it's been you've had a much worse form of fascism than the one we had. And because it was very surreptitious, it enters people's life, people's houses. And this is the panopticon where your mind is controlled, where your words are censored inside your own home. But also, this is the place where the Inquisition was the strongest. How many very courageous people, how many women, the holders of ancient power, the connection to the land. Indigeneity is the connection to the land. For the Palestinians, and we have got rid of indigenous people. We seem that there is no many indigenous people, but there are, and those living in sacrificed zones in this part, including in Europe. This normally are indigenous people who try to stay attached to and protect their land. So we need to rediscover the sense of indigeneity, which is also healing, the power of nature. I keep on saying these days, we are regaining our spirituality through the pain that we have felt, through the sacrifice of Palestine. And spirituality is not something that you regain by unrolling a yoga mat or buying some incense. It's something that you get by reconnecting to the roots that make us human. We have forgotten that we are part of a whole, but we are part of a whole. And today we need to really start thinking as the trees. You know that if there is this experiment which is so telling of putting scientists put plastic around a piece of a forest to see what would happen to the trees. And after a long time, they realized that the trees wouldn't die. And you know why? Because the trees pass oxygen to themselves through the roots. And this is the beauty of solidarity. This is the real meaning of solidarity. Standing for one another. It doesn't mean if you're an artist, if you're a lawyer, it doesn't mean who you are, but it's about doing the right thing to protect and not to destroy. This is why I say it's weird for me to say these things because it's not very international law, isn't it? And at the same time it is. Because international law is a very conservative instrument that we have got because of the sacrifice of other people before us, so as to make sure that there is no racism, there is no discrimination, but there's still racism, so we still need to fight against it. But this is just a starting point to get better. So this is why we need to unite right now. We need to unite and stand for one another without fear, and doesn't mean without feeling fear, without being controlled by fear.
I'm just gonna build on that as quick as possible. I don't really have an answer for that, but it's a very, very real question. And I think it's one that we all need to answer. I feel like maybe an older version of me may have told you, find community and hold on to that solidarity, and that will make you stronger. But I think now I keep going back to a moment in my early days in being, at protests in Palestine, and we were facing soldiers and risk of detention. At some point, a few of my friends have told me, we are all with you, but you need to understand that when you are in that jail cell, you are alone. And you are going to carry that pain alone, and you are going to experience that alone, but we are with you. But you need to be ready to handle that. So I think the best way always to overcome fear is really come from a genuine and sincere place, because I think when you yourself feel that breaking free of your chains, it'll help you overcome it. And in the end, you're fighting to be able to create without that fear. So it's an honorable battle, I think, for you, just like beyond the politics of it,
Emancipation.
Wait. Don't get angry, but I can take only 2 more questions. I've been told. With 2 short answers, right?
So I'm not going to answer.
Go ahead, 2 more.
Hi. My question was specifically for Francesca. When you talked about getting better as a person, as to deconstruct patriarchal, colonial things, it made me think of where do you think the line is between moral and political praxis, and sort of the relationship they have.
Short.
I have a question also. It's especially for Francesca. How do you, as you have explained it, that the genocide is still continuing, how do you see the possibility to end the genocide? And if you actually see a possibility, or it is more likely to be a perpetual conflict? And if you see the possibility, how is more likely to be, if it's through agreements, institutions, or just public demonstrations and pressure? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. So I have an issue with the question, the moral. What is moral? So I'll say, yes, I do see that there is a strong nexus between politics and ethical praxis. I don't think that the law is perfect. The law is a tool and it's perfectible, but surely it's not a human being. So don't blame international law. Blame the power, blame yourself, but again, the law is the starting point. International law, human rights are our starting point. But only work if those users, both right holders and duty bearers, to use some UN jargon, are capable of being ethical. Because we have a problem with corruption. And corruption, I mean, is like when you put yourself above the others. For me, ethics is the opposite. Is that we still are part of a human family, and we have to take care of each other. So it's international law, or the law in its purest form, which doesn't mean that everything that is in the law is right. But human rights are. This is my certainty today. And in 50 years or in 100 years, I might sound as a conservative person, because the law at a certain point has said that human beings were things. They were part, and this is a church. The church, this is why I have yeah, I know, I have to be quick. But however, so it's the law, it's the ethics, and then the practice, not the praxis, but the practice is everyone. If everyone does the right thing, we will get there. We will get there. This is not poetry, this is not inspiration, it's physics. It's called the butterfly effect. Find something most frail than the wings of a butterfly. And at the same time, if all the wings of all butterflies started to flap together, they would make a storm. And this is why I think that if we all did the right thing, all in our space, we will get there. And this also answers partially the second thing. I think that we tend to overcomplicate matters. This is how we can get controlled, right? We think that we have everything we need in our life, and we need to be just more charitable to the others. For me, Palestine, as I said, it's an awakening. It's not, and it's a legal responsibilities for state, moral responsibilities for individuals. But at the same time, it's about what life is. What's happening to the Palestinians is what has happened to millions of other indigenous people. I don't know if we will manage to succeed, but I do believe that it's true that we think that we are saving Palestine, but Palestine is saving us. Palestine is that part of indigeneity that screams justice and risks to liberate us all from the chains of that still enduring form of control of patriarchy that goes today through an economic system that doesn't serve us. When I say people call it anarcho-capitalism, turbo-capitalism, whatever it is, it doesn't serve us. So we need to undo it from within our life, which means, yes, reconciling yourself with the fear, but also reconcile yourself with the idea that you cannot be just a consumer, consuming everything that this beautiful land, earth has, as if we had received it from our ancestors. No, the truth is that we are borrowing from our children, and we are leaving very little to them to enjoy.
So thank you very much, Francesca. Thanks a lot, Mariam. Gràcies a tothom per la participació, per l'interès en un conflicte que jo crec que colpeix la humanitat sencera. Si més no, afecta la humanitat sencera. Doncs gràcies i ho deixem aquí. Ara la Francesca està disposada a firmar llibres i la mantindrem encara quietona aquí per una estona.
I understand.